In the final years of his life, Randolph Scott, the enduring symbol of the American cowboy, shocked classic Hollywood by unveiling a long-buried secret. It was a story that revolved around 6 A-list stars, once dominant forces, on the silver screen, who were forced to live in silence, tormented by the need to conceal their true identities from the spotlight and the public eye. What stunned people even more was the fact that one of those individuals had lived with Scott for over a decade. At the time, the press dubbed them Santa Monica's strangest bachelor couple. And the other, he was none other than a television legend, long rumored to have held a private wedding ceremony with Rock Hudson, another iconic name in Hollywood cinema. So what compelled them to hide? And was Randolph Scott truly just an outsider, recounting their stories? Or was he too quietly part of it all? Let us take you through a door that has remained locked for nearly 70 years, tracing every clue of the truth buried beneath Hollywood's red carpet glamour. Randolph Scott, the familiar cowboy hero of the big screen, stood as a symbol of courage, integrity, and the classic values of Western cinema. But he wasn't just brave in defending what he believed in. He was brave enough to stand up for those who had been forced to live in the shadows, unable to be their true selves. Perhaps when Scott chose to speak out, he wasn't only doing it for himself. He was giving a voice to those who had been silenced for far too long. When he recalled their names, there was no humor, no embellishment, no sensationalism. What he offered instead was deep empathy and a quiet sorrow. He had lived with them, worked alongside them, witnessed things the public never saw. And in the end, he made the choice to reveal everything. Not to shock or to seek attention, but to ease even slightly the loneliness they had carried throughout their lives. Though he had remained silent for decades, in his final chapter, he chose to speak as a belated apology and as a way to stand on the side of truth, even if late, never too late. 1. Montgomery Clift, the man who only dared to love when no one was watching. The first name on Randolph Scott's list was none other than Montgomery Clift, a heart overflowing with love, yet never once able to experience a complete and true love in its fullest sense. On the silver screen, Clift portrayed men madly, even blindly, in love with women. But in real life, he was a homosexual, a reality that at the time was tantamount to carrying an invisible life sentence haunting him endlessly. From the moment he set foot in Hollywood, Clift was forced to live 2 parallel lives. One, to perform for the public eye, and another, his true life, silent, hidden, and kept entirely to himself. In front of the camera, he shone beside Elizabeth Taylor, Olivia de Havilland, and Shelley Winters. But when the lights went out, he slipped quietly through the night to visit his lover's home, exchanged hurried kisses in the car, and carried tender dreams that he dared not speak aloud. Few knew that Clift had once fallen deeply in love with a man 20 years his senior, a renowned producer. The two secretly lived together for nearly a year until the studio found out. Within a mere 24 hours, Clift was forced to move out of the apartment they had shared, erase all traces of their relationship, and appear on a magazine cover, alongside a famous actress arranged by the studio to play the role of his girlfriend. From that point on, no man dared stay by his side. There was a moment when Clift whispered to Elizabeth Taylor, "If I loved someone of the same sex, would you hate me?" Taylor didn't reply. She simply held him for a long, long time. They were soulmates, two lost spirits drifting through the glamorous yet cold world of Hollywood. It was Taylor who first rushed to the hospital after Clift's failed suicide attempt, driving his car straight into a utility pole after his last lover left him without a single word. The face that once captivated the world was now shattered. His lips were torn, his cheekbone crushed, one eye swollen and bruised, never to return to its former self. And with that face, what was truly broken beyond repair was Clift's pride and his heart. After the accident, Hollywood turned its back on him. They had no use for a washed-up, pretty face. They certainly didn't want their brand associated with someone deemed non-conforming who might unsettle investors. Clift was gradually reduced to obscure supporting roles clinging to life through alcohol and painkillers in a cramped apartment crammed with love letters he never dared to send. Randolph Scott once told a close friend over dinner Monty didn't die of heart failure. He died from love that was never returned, because every time his heart stirred, someone would snuff it out immediately. Clift's body was found one July morning in 1966, curled up among old letters, and with the record, "Only love can break a heart," still echoing through the room. The official cause was a heart attack, but everyone knew his heart had stopped beating long before that, dying slowly each day, ever since his first love was erased from his life like a mistake never meant to exist. To Hollywood, Clift was a symbol of tragedy. But to Randolph Scott, he was the clearest proof of a world so cruel it denied a man the right to love another man. Montgomery Clift gave up his soul just to be able to love in the shadows. And from the moment Montgomery Clift was added to the list, Scott's list began to take on a darker tone. Because the next name wasn't just the most scandalous, it belonged to someone who sacrificed even his sanity just for daring to live true to himself. Cary Grant. 2. Cary Grant, the nameless lover in the beach house. Among the 6 famous men, Randolph Scott once mentioned, the name that sparked the most public speculation was none other than Cary Grant. The reason wasn't just because he was one of the biggest Hollywood stars of that era, but because there had been a special relationship between him and Scott, so special that everyone could feel it, yet no one had the courage to call it by name. The two of them lived together for over a decade in a beachside house in Santa Monica. Their life wasn't like that of two same-sex friends temporarily sharing a place for convenience. On the contrary, everything in that house was filled with a family essence. They planted flowers on the balcony together, gathered around the grill for weekend BBQs, and occasionally invited their close circle of friends over for dinner. Yet strangely, no one ever saw any women frequently visiting the house. At the time, the media dubbed them the bachelor couple. Photos of the two by the pool, dressed identically, sipping morning coffee side by side, appeared regularly in entertainment magazines. However, whenever a photo seemed just a bit too intimate, it would mysteriously disappear from newsstands just a few hours after release. Those in the industry understood well it was the studios working behind the scenes, quietly demanding a halt in distribution to protect both men's ideal masculinity image. Then one day Cary suddenly moved out of the house. No one knew the real reason. All that was known was that a few months later he began publicly dating a young actress. As for Scott, he too unexpectedly married Marion DuPont, the heiress of one of America's wealthiest families. Meanwhile, Cary went on to have 5 marriages, none of which lasted. That era didn't grant them the right to call each other by their true names. But for anyone who had the chance to be close to them, it was clear Scott never looked at anyone else the way he looked at Cary. And Cary, beneath the dazzling stage lights, would grow silent every time Scott's name was mentioned. In a rare interview, near the end of his life, when asked who made him feel the safest, Cary simply smiled and replied he once was home. Scott never publicly confirmed anything. However, when recounting the 6 men who had to live in hiding within Hollywood, he placed Cary's name at the very top. Perhaps that was his final confession, silent, yet unmistakably clear. That affection, though never named, always existed, deep enough to need no proof, quiet enough that no one dared to touch it. Ironically, like a cruel joke of fate, the next person on Randolph Scott's list of close friends, Jim Nabors, became entangled in a rumor of being Rock Hudson's secret husband. That one rumor nearly destroyed both of their careers, and that was only the beginning of a scandal that still smolders to this day. 3. Jim Nabors, the double life and hidden sorrows of a silver screen star. Jim Nabors, the third name mentioned by Randolph Scott, once brought laughter to millions of American viewers with his portrayal of Gomer Pyle, a bumbling, sincere, and deeply lovable character. On television, he was the embodiment of innocent naivety. Yet behind the stage lights, Jim lived like a shadow, meticulously concealing himself beneath a mask of perfection that was almost impossible to believe. He was a gay man, and he had deeply loved another man named Stan Cadwallader. The two were together for nearly 4 decades, but not once did they dare to hold hands in public. Every trace of Stan was carefully erased from Jim's public and media life. They shared a home in Hawaii, but Jim had to register it under someone else's name. They traveled together, but always booked separate tickets, dined at different tables, and slipped back into their hotel through the rear entrance in silence. Randolph Scott once recounted that there was an occasion when a single photo of Jim and Stan, unintentionally captured in the background of a news report, prompted Jim to buy the entire usage rights of the newspaper, just to ensure that image would never be published. In 1971, a true nightmare struck. A baseless rumor spread like wildfire, claiming that Jim Nabors and Rock Hudson had secretly gotten married in Carmel. The rumor shattered both men completely. Hudson was banned from making any public appearances with Jim at events. As for Jim, he vanished from television for nearly a year and canceled all of his advertising contracts and upcoming scripts. It wasn't until 2013, when there was almost nothing left to lose, that Jim finally dared to publicly marry Stan. The ceremony took place quietly in Seattle, without flash bulbs, without a single media report, and without a single colleague brave enough to attend, most still paralyzed by fear of the consequences. But that brief dream lasted only a few months. That same year, Jim passed away due to health complications. The man who once made all of America burst into laughter ended up living and dying in a love that no one dared to name. Hollywood gave him everything: fame, wealth, and a legendary status. But in return, Jim had to sacrifice the right to love, the right to live his truth, and the right to openly embrace the man he loved in the light of day. And the next person would be forced to trade truth, love, and their very life just to protect a lie that could survive only through the television screen. 4. Merv Griffin, sacrificing an empire just to conceal his true self. The name Merv Griffin has become all too familiar. He was a witty, versatile talk show host and the mastermind behind two iconic television game shows, Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. In the eyes of the public, Merv was the embodiment of the American dream. Intelligent, charming, ever smiling, and seemingly always in control of everything. And yet, there was a truth that had never been spoken, not even by him. In a rare moment of candor, Randolph Scott once made a cryptic remark about his close friend Merv spent his entire life loving only one person. But he had to bury that love as if it had never existed. The one who stirred Merv's heart was a young, unknown musician nearly 20 years his junior. They met during a secret recording session and quickly fell into a whirlwind romance. A relationship that existed only in the shadows. Merv purchased an entire penthouse in New York City, not as a show of wealth, but simply to create a private space where the two could live authentically. They never dared walk the streets together. During the day, neither of them would call the other. Even in the elevator, one would wear dark sunglasses while the other pretended to press a different floor. Because even the smallest mistake could have unimaginable consequences. And then that dreadful mistake happened. A paparazzo had tailed them all the way to a parking lot. He captured a single moment, the two sitting close together, shoulder to shoulder. Just one photo. But Merv panicked. Within less than 48 hours, his lover was flown to London in haste. No explanation, no message, no letter. Only a pre-established bank account and a brief note. From now on, consider me a stranger. People often asked, why didn't Merv ever marry? Why was his private life always shrouded in mystery? And why, even beneath the spotlight, did his eyes always seem to hold a trace of sorrow, as if he were constantly running from something Scott knew the answer? He had once seen Merv sitting silently backstage after the stage lights had gone out. Alone, cradling a guitar with no strings, he softly hummed a love song that had never been made public. In that moment, Merv was no longer the charming host on screen, but a man who had given up everything just to keep one secret buried. In the end, Merv Griffin passed away in solitude. On his deathbed, he left a final instruction with his attorney. Don't let anyone dig into my life after I'm gone. In his personal notebook, there was only one hurriedly scribbled line with no name attached. If I could live again, I'd want to love you in daylight. But that was something Merv never once dared to do in his entire life. However, Merv Griffin's story is not an isolated case. The next name Randolph I'm about to mention would surely leave you stunned. A gentleman with a dazzling smile, known for playing the perfect lover, a man who made countless women swoon. Yet behind the dazzling makeup of Hollywood was a hidden world of sexuality chillingly concealed. 5. Cesar Romero, the silver screen lover and the hidden truth. Cesar Romero was the kind of gentleman whose presence could make an entire room pause and turn. He always appeared in a crisply pressed suit, his hair immaculately slicked back without a strand out of place, and his face perpetually adorned with a charming smile, as if untouched by sorrow. He frequently played the perfect romantic lead on screen, paired with many famous starlets, like Marlene Dietrich and Lucille Ball. At one point, rumors even circulated that he had secretly gotten engaged. But all of it was merely a mask, a carefully crafted illusion by Hollywood, meant to conceal a truth that neither he nor the era he lived in could openly acknowledge. Cesar Romero was gay. And the only love of his life was something he had to hide until the final years of his existence. Randolph Scott once recalled that Cesar had fallen in love with a young dancer nearly 30 years his junior. They met in Vegas, were smitten at first sight, and quietly remained together for nearly a decade, cloaked in secrecy. Cesar bought the young man a private apartment in Los Angeles, never under his own name, never appearing together in public, never a single line in the press. Every meeting had to be clandestine, entering through back doors, switching cars mid-route, booking hotel rooms under false names. Once, paparazzi nearly caught a photo of the two in a hotel elevator. That one close call was enough. Cesar immediately arranged for his lover to be sent to Europe, changed phone numbers, and cut off all contact. Every trace was erased. Some close friends later recalled he didn't say a word, just sat in his apartment until morning, emptied several bottles of liquor, his hand still gripping a small piece of paper scrawled with the young man's name in pencil. When the young man died of AIDS in the late 1980s, Cesar couldn't bring himself to attend the funeral. He simply stood quietly across the street, watching the cemetery through the car window. After that, he vanished from the public eye for nearly a year. No one knew where he went. Only one former crew member shared a memory. Cesar had returned to the old apartment, the place where they had once shared stolen moments, and sat all night in the bathroom staring at the crack in the mirror, the very one his lover had made in a fit of anger over being hidden. In his old age, Cesar lived alone in Palm Springs. He had no wife, no children, and not a single family photo on the wall. All that remained were a few portraits of his lover that he had painted by hand, and a pair of black leather shoes carefully stored in his closet, the shoes that had once belonged to the young man. Perhaps for his entire life, all he truly wished for was something heartbreakingly simple: to hold the hand of the one he loved in broad daylight. But Hollywood never allowed that wish to come true. And that story, tragic as it was still not the saddest final chapter. Because the last name on Randolph Scott's list belonged to Hollywood's ultimate symbol of masculinity, who also became the first publicly known tragedy that shocked all of America into a harsh awakening. That man was Rock Hudson. And the price he paid for keeping his life a secret was his very own life. 6. Rock Hudson, the Prince. Trapped in someone else's skin. Rock Hudson was not just a movie star. He was once America's love icon, the ideal man admired around the world. With chiseled features like a marble statue, a voice as smooth as velvet, and a tall, muscular physique, he captivated not only women, but even drew admiring and envious glances from other men. In films alongside Doris Day or Elizabeth Taylor Hudson, appeared as the perfect gentleman, the embodiment of what Hollywood wanted audiences to believe truly existed. Yet few realized that Rock Hudson was in fact a grand illusion meticulously crafted by an intricate machine. From the moment he set foot in Hollywood, he was forced to abandon his true self to become a perfect version of a man that the public yearned to see. Hudson was gay, but at the time, in the heart of the film industry, that was not only taboo, it was a label that could completely destroy his career, reputation, multi-million-dollar contracts, and even his life. A single careless photo, a rumor, or an accidental hug caught on camera could plunge him into ruin. His manager, Henry Wilson, was notoriously known as the man who created fake straight gentlemen. To Wilson, Rock Hudson wasn't a human being with emotions and identity, but a vivid performance, a product painstakingly manufactured. Hudson had to learn everything: how to walk, how to smile, how to speak in interviews. He was even taught how to gaze at women in a way that looked just passionate enough when featured on magazine covers. Every date, every kiss he gave to a female starlet was part of a calculated arrangement. Every intimate photograph was the result of a carefully staged production, no different from a film scene. At one point, Hudson came close to the edge of despair. He bought a one-way ticket, intending to leave Hollywood, change his name, and start a new life in Paris. But the night before his departure, his agent called and coldly warned, "If you leave, I will tell the press everything." Upon hearing that Hudson burned the ticket, extinguishing the last flicker of hope in his heart, and returned to the set, continuing to perform not just in front of the camera, but in his own life. The price he paid was years of silent suffering endured in complete solitude. Outwardly, he remained the flawless image of masculinity, but inside Hudson was falling apart. He began to develop illnesses brought on by prolonged stress, from dependency on sedatives to chain smoking, all just to cope with the inescapable torment within. By 1984, Hudson discovered he had contracted AIDS, a disease that at the time was not only a medical condition, but branded as the devil's plague, a supposed punishment for those who lived incorrectly. Hospitals refused to treat him. Former co-stars, once close friends, panicked and distanced themselves to protect their reputations. Society as a whole turned its back on him. His body became gaunt, his eyes sunken, his hair falling out in clumps. He lived in isolation in his mansion, allowing no visitors and refusing to be photographed. Yet one unwanted picture was still captured by the paparazzi, a frail, rambling Hudson being helped out of the hospital, the dim light unable to preserve the face that once captivated the world. That photo quickly made the front pages of countless newspapers. And in that moment, Americans were stunned to realize the man they had once adored had never been allowed to live like a regular human being. His entire life had been shrouded in a mask. His love hidden his true self, buried deep within. Rock Hudson took his final breath in a cold room, without family by his side, without any goodbyes, with no one to hold his hand one last time. He had spent his entire life guarding a secret, living a life that was never truly his. And when he died, Hollywood's brutal silence felt like the final verdict. Randolph Scott did not attend Hudson's funeral, but those close to him revealed that he sent a wreath of white flowers accompanied by a simple card that read, "If only you could have lived as your true self from the very beginning." Rock Hudson's story is not merely of personal tragedy. It stands as evidence of the staggering price that gay individuals have had to pay in a society that persistently refuses to accept difference. It is a story of fabrication, loneliness, and the crushing despair of living under the shadow of fame. On March 2, 1980, Randolph Scott drew his last breath in Beverly Hills, bringing to a close a life forever tied to the image of honorable cowboys and roles that were soft-spoken but filled with power. He passed away due to heart failure and lung disease. His body was laid to rest in Charlotte, the city where he was born, beside the wife who had been by his side for over 40 years of his life. And yet, the legacy he left behind is not one that can be easily forgotten. All of his letters, photographs, and personal notes, precious fragments of memory that remain, were delivered to UCLA, where they are preserved as a way of reminding us that there was once a man who bravely faced the truth, even when it had become far too late. This story truly moved us. If it touched you as well, please click like to give us the motivation to create more videos like this one. And don't forget to follow our channel so you won't miss the untold stories hidden behind Hollywood's bright lights. See you in the next video.